All right, y'all. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome. My name is Indigo Sparks. We are here at 180 Maiden Lane for the folks who are joining us on the live stream. Welcome to Studio Demo. Studio Demo is a broadcast hub featuring New Ink's wider creative community where conversations, demonstrations, and exchanges happen live. Our next panel is Brainrot Aesthetics. It explores how social-first video content has evolved to dominate visual culture and asks what that shift means for culture and society at large. Taking a wider lens to examine the internet's effect on the evolution of contemporary art, this conversation breaks down Brainrot, aesthetics as a new genre with its own distinct signifiers and motifs. This talk is moderated by cultural critic, performance curator, and brand consultant, Whitney Mallet. Whitney is the founding editor of the Whitney Review of New Writing, a biannual print journal of literary criticism, and the co-editor of the book Barbie Dreamhouse, an architectural survey. Her work has been presented at MoMA PS1, the Baltimore Museum of Art, and Performance Space New York. Whitney is joined by Curatorial Assistant of the Whitney Museum, David Lisbon, a previous architect in New York City. David has written about surveillance in art institutions and advocated for a more transparent and democratic use of institutional data. Working in the private sector, developing websites, digital experiences, and consulting on the production of NFTs, David believes this data could help educate the public about how their personal information is used by third parties. Whitney is also joined by Bri Griffin, an artist, organizer, and internet researcher interested in hidden structures that shape our digital realities. Bri works as a community designer at Rhizome.org, where they research and develop programming to reflect upon the past and present of digital art, internet culture, and technology. You can learn more about them at demofestival.org, per usual. Please join me in welcoming them to the stage.
Thank you so much for coming to Brainrot Aesthetics.
Thanks
I'm
for coming
Whitney.
to Brainrot. David, I'm David.
Bri.
I think, am I responsible for putting the video on too? Okay. So we thought one of the things we would start today with was defining our terms. So while I look for this video, do I, yeah, okay, sorry. Let's start with that. You two, how would you define Brainrot?
Do you want to start?
I can start. I think it's sort of a phenomena that's existed forever that just has some new nomenclature, and so I think it is about the Italian Brainrot, right? It's kind of about that. That's like the idea bursting into the mainstream, but I also think it's about TikTok, and it's sort of really like a term that is about memes and memetics. And really, it's about memes that are moving images or sounds or have these kind of like earworm type cadences to them that are more about the repetition and the circulation of an idea than they are about actually like what is underneath that idea.
Yeah, I think to me, I first started seeing Brainrot appear sort of in reference to like reality TV as this sort of like no thing that you aren't supposed to consume because it's so lowbrow, and it's this sort of anti-intellectual content that you were like consuming but not really getting things out of, so hence brain rotting. I think when people say brain rotting now, it's become this much more condensed extreme form. Like instead of reality TV, it's something that you consume in like seconds, if that. But it still has those same sort of effects on your brain where you're really like tuning out.
How does the role of dopamine, the rise of dopamine culture, saying like for sports, saying there's like an evolution from playing sports outside to watching sports on TV to like gambling online about sports, if that's like one kind of track?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is about dopamine, and I think it's sort of about like, you know, right, the secularization of our society and the kind of want of people to have something that they can like point to be like, this is my favorite thing, this is the thing that I'm obsessed with, this is the thing that is essentially kind of like helping me move through space with some feeling of purpose. And I think those things used to be a lot slower. It used to be something that was about community. And I think with Brainrot and sort of with what's happening in the internet, it's about like being like, okay, I know it's cool, I know it's cool, I know it's happening. Like I know the Bombardillo Crocodillo. Like you're supposed to know these things. And I think that's also part of the Brainrot is like the dopamine hit that you get from being like, I'm in the zeitgeist and I'm actually moving as fast as it's moving.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with the sort of like extension of dopamine culture in relation to Brainrot. It makes me think a lot about like addiction tactics, especially you mentioned like gambling, for example. Gambling is a very concentrated optimization of like making someone addicted to this like stimuli. Brainrot on something that is monetized, a platform that is monetized, is sort of this exact same thing that's been translated to a digital environment for this, I would say, to make money at the end of the day. I also, outside of the dopamine aspects, like for example, children using or repeating things that they see in Brainrot content, I feel like that gets more to the sort of like linguistics of like very human exchange and sort of that mimicry where you sort of have this common signal or language, and it's sort of like helps bring you together in this weird way. So I think it's the dopamine culture, but there's something else happening too.
Yeah, it's kind of like the language they speak in Animal Crossing or Simlish, right? It's kind of like these things that are like, it's like a facsimile for what's happening, but it doesn't even, like we understand it because it's just like, okay, you meet a new person, you shake their hand. It's like all of these kind of things that maybe don't even need to be explained like linguistically, right? Because they're just about sort of the way that people relate to each other.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So there's long been like media alarmism about different products, especially ones that can capture our attention and be somewhat addictive, like Victorian romance, Gothic romance novels. And I think there's a similar idea of its disembodying to some degree. But is there something different about internet culture, this acceleration of some of these qualities in media? And should we be reflexive about the moral judgment of Brainrot? Does that say something about the people who think, assume Brainrot equals bad?
Yeah, I can answer this first. I think there is this sort of elitism in sort of like this media is intellectual and good and this media isn't. We talked about reality TV briefly. I think there's a lot contained in reality TV that's very intellectual, and I'm sure there are people writing academic papers on the Kardashians at this very moment. And I think when people sort of say it's this sort of like dumb media, it's erasing a lot of other, I think, conversations that need to be happening.
And it's erasing the kind of like the mental faculty of being able to stack all of these references on top of each other and then like add another reference and then circulate it. I mean, I'm really thinking about like Big Chungus, and it's like to know about Big Chungus, you have to know who Bugs Bunny is, right? And to know who Bugs Bunny is, you have to know about Looney Tunes. You have to know that he's like the protagonist, right? It's not Elmer Fudd, it's not Donald Duck, it's Bugs Bunny for a reason. And like, I think that people who kind of look down on it, or people who are like, this is anti-intellectual, are actually sort of negating the intelligence of stacking all of these things on top of each other, because for those people, maybe that stacking doesn't feel linear enough or logical enough because they're used to kind of having information delivered in a certain way. And like, yeah, on the Kardashian paper, right, it's like, it's just because also they're not children, right? Or they're not at a point in their life where this thing is meaningful to them and their community. And so they can't understand it as a larger sort of phenomena, I think.
Yeah, it makes me think about slang and the way people would interact with African American language and the way that we speak as a community. It was seen as something that's dumb as a first impression, which obviously that's been proven to not be the case. Same thing, there's a lot more embedded in that.
Do you think there's self-inscription similar to slang, like a self-identification of, like, there's also often shorthand to brainrot or memes that are, saying, you were saying a little bit like saying something, or there's a quality of self-inscription to this, and that often it can be, the dismissal of it can also be like a kind of defense mechanism for it.
Yeah, I think it's just like people who, it's hard to understand the value of something that you've never even really conceptualized as part of a larger like zeitgeist, and that I think is a lot of the kind of devaluing of these certain ideas until they reach a precipice, right? Until there's like 3 people sitting on stage talking about it, and then it's like, okay, well, like
the gentrification of brainrot.
Literally, like I'm right, and it's just interesting to kind of like watch it kind of occur, and to watch the pendulum swing back and forth, because I feel like right across all of our lives there have been these things that are like, it's not okay to do this, and then we have like and I think it's also about the pandemic, right? There's also these catalyzing events that push everyone into realizing, oh, it's fun. Like, I think when I was a little kid, I would always be like, why can't we have communion on the internet? Like, why can't I just do church from home? And my parents would be like, that's not what God wants. Like, that's not what you're supposed to do. And I would be like, I'm pretty sure he's okay with me staying home today. And they'd be like, no. And then the pandemic happened, and everyone was doing their drive-by communion or whatever, and doing their church on Zoom. And it was like, oh, this is not, it's not bad, right? It's just like we've been forced into this scenario, and now this thing that we never thought was possible is the norm.
And something we were talking about a little bit before too is brainrot as self-care. Like, what are the conditions or contexts that have created that reclamation that's happening?
I mean, when I personally brainrot, it's usually when I'm at an extreme point of exhaustion, where I'm really trying to let myself escape into this sort of like fantasy media world, which feels very, I would say, oftentimes dirty and something that you're not really supposed to do or should be allowed to do. But we as a society, especially in New York, we kind of have like gotten rid of this thing called resting. We're not really allowed to do it in a lot of different instances. We're on this like 24/7 cycle. So I think at one point we used to just rest and like not think. And now one of the only ways to do that in this world where we're kind of bombarded with endless media is to consume media that sort of does that for us.
It's like stimming for me, kind of, to just like go through the videos and to be like, okay, a bunch of these are terrible, but it is like, yeah, I feel like there is a sort of a fugue state, right, of just scrolling and kind of being like, okay, this one's not for me, this one's not for me. Maybe use the dislike button on TikTok so it knows, and then kind of really finding something that you're like, oh, this is actually like, this made my day. And I think it's like interesting because, like, yeah, like you were saying, that thing used to happen with human interaction, right? It used to be sort of like you pass someone, or it's your mailman, and you're like, oh, how's it going, right? And now it's actually more like, oh, it's some dumb creator who I've been watching make bad shit, and now they're making something that's funny to me.
Is there a value judgment around different types of connection, like connection in your neighborhood that's more localized or even material versus like a dematerial kind of connection that, because someone could say, I mean, I still think sometimes, as I'm asking this question about like self-reflexivity of judgment, I still think I spend too much time online, and I do think it's like, sometimes, like I do feel like earnestly like touch grass, but at the same time, is there a lot of like assumptions that kind of hyper connection through this media is somehow the wrong type of connection?
I mean, culturally, we used to have a lot more of a common ground of sorts. I mean, there was Beyonce, Rihanna, Taylor Swift, and we all could kind of agree on that. But we're at the point where there's so many different tiny subcultures. The things that we're able to sort of meet at have become so small that Brainrot is one of the few places where we maybe all saw this meme and can sort of like either hate on it or like talk about it at least. At least it's something that we all kind of like recognize. So we're kind of, I would say we're losing these places of common ground culturally. And yeah, it sucks that we have Brainrot as the replacement for something that used to be a lot more rich.
Could you see a meme creator running for public office?
I think all of them are already. And I think that they know that, and I think that, what's the guy's name? The senator, the guy who was the grifter, who was a drag queen, George Santos, somebody said it. Yeah, it's like he's actually such a great example, and he was on Cameo, like, he's such a great example because actually it's like, why be a politician when I could just be crazy and like make money doing that? And I think, to me, it's also about Streamer University. I don't know if any of you guys know about Streamer University, Kai Cenat renting out the University of Akron, Ohio, and picking his 100 favorite streamers to go, like, do you know about this? Okay, well, yeah, he got all of his favorite streamers to come, like, live in this university, right, to sort of, like, learn about streaming, but to be in this isolated environment where they could support each other. And, of course, it deteriorated super quickly, but it's almost like people don't want to go to college anymore. They want to go to Streamer University. And so, to me, I think... Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just.
Well, is that shortcut? I guess there's this.
Well, I think there are no shortcuts, and I guess that's what I'm trying to say is almost like it does become work, and it's just so interesting how in like our want to escape from work, we create all of these new sort of subcategories of like labor and digital labor and sort of like making, and it's really. Sorry, I was talking about something coming full circle earlier. It'll come back to me, but...
Your brain is rotted.
Yeah.
Streamer University. I think I'm good on that. I mean, whatever the tuition is, it's probably too much.
No, it's free. It's free. They all get invited, and they love it, and they're freaking out, and they get a free phone because it's sponsored by T-Mobile, and it's sponsored by State Farm Insurance, right? And so it's like these companies understand the value of like putting their hat in the ring and being like, well, at least we could just give our phones to people who are popular, to Gen Z and Gen Alpha, right? It's like this, but no, it's free. It's free. That's the thing.
But you have to have clout.
A lot of it.
Yeah.
It's not democratized.
I would say that brain rotting as something that exists isn't inherently bad, but we have this scale of addiction techniques, and there is a point in which it crosses over, and I've done this myself where I'm like, oh, whoops, I just spent like 3 hours doing this, and it feels bad, and that happens very like commonly.
Do you like punish yourself after the fact? I mean, I think it's really, I don't ever, because I have a Google phone, so I don't get my screen time, like I never look at it, because it's like, I know when I'm doing it too much, like I don't need a machine to tell me that I'm like bored.
Yeah, I have an arena note to myself where I was like reflecting on this, and I was like, oh, it's like evil to consume this much information and not sort of like give it back to society in some way. And I think that note is somewhere, it's like super embarrassing, but I mean, I just changed my like practice. So as I consume a lot of information, I try to put something back. So I started like a public notebook, and I have a lot of like very public places where I regurgitate and like mix and recombine things I'm consuming.
Do you have a Substack?
No.
You should make one.
I'm afraid.
I think that's brain rot too.
I have a Substack, and a lot of the essays on Substack are about brain rot, to be honest, and they're also about like if Tate McRae is pretty or not.
Who is that?
Oh, she's a pop star from Canada. I'm from Canada. She went to my high school.
Exactly what I meant. Like, we don't have a lot of common ground.
I thought, but like, she's like breaking out a bit in the States. I thought people wouldn't know who she is, but they're discussing like whether either like because I guess there's people on Twitter who are like, she's not that hot. There's a blonde girl who walks into every room who's that pretty, and they're like, your beauty standards are fucked up because of the Instagram face, where you think everything it needs to look like Madison Beer, and then it's just like. But I am fascinated that these articles have way more views than I have ever, probably any media I've ever made. I mean, part of the I guess like the idea of attention, and like it makes me think of The Gimmick, which is, I don't know if you guys have read Sion Nwai's book on The Gimmick, but one thing I think interesting about The Gimmick is that it's simultaneously working too hard to get our attention, and it's too cheap. So it's both working too hard and working not hard enough. But I think that like memes have this quality of we feel like we want to judge them for getting our attention in the wrong ways.
I mean, yeah, I think that there's always, and it's interesting because I think there's always been this kind of industry of creating these things that are like traps, right? That are essentially kind of these traps on your time or your energy. And, you know, there's this really good Hito Sterile essay about spam, right? And the kind of like the fact of it not being anything, but that's actually what it's composed of. And I think, right, it's almost like Brainrot is spam, but it's like sanctioned. And I think that, you know, the funny thing to me about spam or phishing or like trying to get old people's credit card numbers is like someone has to fall for it, right? That even though there's thousands of people who will open it and be like, this isn't real, for some people they open it and they're like, okay, $1 million, like take my social security number. And that's like, and I think that's also what Brainrot is about and kind of where we are in the internet and with just content, right? It's almost like people are like, well, I'll just spend hours making whatever I can make, and whatever sticks, I'm happy to have that be my brand moving forward because it's more about like quantity in terms of like likes and traffic than it is about quality for some people, not everyone.
Now, we also were talking a little bit about contemporary art and Brainrot. Bri, you brought up that Mark Leckey show. I don't know if we have like the final closing note. Maybe we could talk about a little bit the relationship between art and Brainrot.
Yeah, I mean, the Mark Leckey show that I saw recently was insane because it sort of amplifies this meme and translates it to a lot of different formats that you would never conceive possible. And it sort of became this like ballet of like format in a way that I thought was really satisfying and exciting. But it's interesting, once you make artwork about a meme, it sort of like escapes the qualities of, or the mimetic qualities of what made it a meme in the first place. And then it's like not Brainrot anymore. It's like an intellectual like conversation about Brainrot. And it becomes this very separate like other thing. And yeah, I mean, pros and cons, the way it affects contemporary art. Like, I went to the KW Institute's Poetics of Encryption show, and I feel very sad that the only thing I remember is there was a taxidermy version of the meme cat doing like the walking thing that even Franco did. And I'm like, wow, they shouldn't have put that in the show maybe, because it was like very powerful. And that's like the one thing I remember. There was a lot of like actual art that was trying very hard, a lot of infographics and like diagrams, but in my head is this like cat.
I think we're coming up to time. Any closing remarks here?
Don't knock it till you try it. Spend 24 hours on your phone and write a Substack essay about it and get famous and rich and quit your job.
Period.
Okay.
Thank you so much to
thanks for coming.
New Ink and the New Museum. Thank you for all coming. Thank you to Indigo and Raul and Salome and everyone who's helped put this together. Yeah. Did the brain rot?
I don't even think it started.
Oh my god.
It was supposed to be a time lapse.
I was like,
of a
wow, it's
brain
really
rotting.
slow, but we forgot to press play. So let me just see. This is what was gonna go.
It's very gross.
Maybe we spared you all from
that was our
seeing this.
content.
It's a real brain.
It's a pig brain. It's not a human one.
We killed a pig for this talk. I'm kidding.
It was gonna go 2 times. It was like a clock that would help us measure time. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Okay, cool.